Welcome to the Strong Youth Project, where our mission is to improve organized sport experiences for youth, parents, coaches, and other mentors via education and evidence-based practice.
All right, if I could have your attention, please, if you want to find your seats again, we'll get this party started. I just have to say I'm very excited about the possibility of working with the BYU Strong Youth Project to help them meet their aims. I think their aims align with most of what we're doing already, so very excited about that. Want to introduce Jenae Nelson. We've been on a couple of conference calls. I've listened to some of her stuff, very impressed with what she does and who she is. She has a lot to offer regarding character development. I think she's going to highlight something I sent her. I hope it's okay. But without further ado, let's welcome Jenae Nelson to the floor. Let's hear her for her.
Thank you. Hopefully, having the microphone right here, you guys can hear me. Is that good? Okay. So, I want to start off actually questioning one of the assumptions that we are probably making, everyone here. And that is that sports are good for you. So I want to really ask the question, are sports actually good for you? So we're assuming that. We make that assumption. We assume that the kids in our programs are benefiting. But are they really? So the answer to that is actually kind of complicated, particularly from a research perspective. So the effects are actually mixed. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But it's true that we kind of make the assumption that it's always a good thing, right? But when you really kind of examine your own personal experience, you can probably readily come to mind some examples where it hasn't been good, right? Or some people who haven't benefited from sport. For the most part, we make this assumption that it's good. So the good news is that for the most part, there are quite a bit of benefits to recreational sports. Here's a few of them based off the research: physical and mental well-being, identity development, social networks, meaningful relationships, psychological well-being, leadership, and self-determination are a few. Here's another study here. Is that a little bit better? If that works, I think I might just hold this. But you'll find that there's also, wrong one. Sorry, guys. You'll find that there's also some potential negative outcomes that I alluded to there. So increases in risk-taking, eating disorders, low self-esteem, aggression, decreased mortality. So that's a little bit concerning for me, that's decreased morality there. And it leads me to ask this question with you guys. What makes the difference then between positive outcomes and negative outcomes in sports? So we know that it can be good, it can be bad. What makes a difference?
I think a lot of times we obviously use volunteers to be our coaches, right? And they're just average Joes, mom and dads and whatnot, but they don't realize the effect that they have on these kids. And my positive and negative outcomes have always been involving the coach. Mm-hmm. And if the coach is teaching and building and investing, then it's always going to be a positive outcome. But if the coach is all about winning and do it this way and not that way, and I just think that maybe train them differently. Just things like that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is going to not be good. Let me move this over here. Sorry, guys. We're recording and microphoning at the same time. I think that's a really good insight that the coach is going to be shaping that experience quite a bit, and the coach's mindset, right? So it's important to know that there's actually a connection here between, when we say human development and performance, that essentially we're saying there's really a connection between character and performance, okay? And that those things work together hand in hand, and they work best together. And when you're working on human development and performance, you're more likely to have those positive outcomes that we were talking about, and that we want. In fact, this is a really great chart here for you guys to look at. When you focus on growth and self-actualization, you see an improvement of abilities. When you focus on transcendence, you're more likely to experience flow, which we want that. That's an optimal state for our athletes. When you increase autonomy, competence, and connectedness, that's based off of self-determination theory, your athletes are more likely to have intrinsic motivation and engage more. And then having a global self-worth versus a contingent self-worth. That microphone is really giving me a hard time, isn't it?
We
Like,
keep turning it up.
sorry, coming in and out.
Switch to that hand mic?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm gonna throw that away. This one here. Let's do that. Oh, doesn't matter to me. Is that better? Okay. So global self-worth versus contingent self-worth. So contingent self-worth is this idea that you only matter if you win or if you're the best, and your worth is contingent upon your performance. But global self-worth is it's not contingent upon those things. And so when you instill global self-worth in your athletes, you're going to see less fear and concern for mistakes. That's going to free up the athlete to really perform their best mentally. Purpose and meaning, and this is going to be the focus of what we talk about. You see more transfer of skill, so that means the things that they're learning in sport are actually going to benefit them in school, work, home life, and that's what we really want, right? We want to see that this mini context of development actually improves all of the areas of their life, not just on the field. Oh, yeah. You guys. This is too technical. Okay, and then also again, intrinsic motivation going up. And intrinsic motivation is where they're doing it because they want to, they feel internally motivated versus their parents are making them, their coach is making them. I mean, really focusing on human development, these aspects of human development are creating a better athlete. So we want to focus on both of those things. Okay. So I want to break down this a little bit further as we're focusing in on specifically on purpose. And I talked a little bit about contingent self-worth. So when your self-worth is based off of performance versus purpose, you're going to see worse outcomes. So we really want for our youth to be focused on purpose. We want them to have a good purpose. And here's some research that shows why this is so important. Let me break this down for you. So these bars here, these white dot ones, those are folks who had a performance-based identity, and then these ones with the striped lines here, those are those who have a purpose identity. And you can see that the performance identities are lower. This is 0, and then this is down. So they have less feelings of that, or they report less good life, self-worth, less purpose, more fear of failure, more of that contingent self-worth, concern over mistakes. Personal standards are higher. That's interesting. But overall, kind of a bleak picture. We don't want this. We don't want athletes to have this profile. However, if you look at the purpose, they're higher on good life, self-worth, of course, purpose, lower on fear of failure, contingent self-worth, concern over mistakes, and so forth. So really, this is the kind of athlete that we hope to inspire, and that we hope that we're working on that. So in order to do that, we really have to ask ourselves, as the adults, what is the goal of youth sports then? What is the purpose? What is the goal? Participation alone is insufficient to produce meaning. Simply playing a sport is rarely a meaningful experience. In other words, exposure or participation alone does not necessarily emotionally affect people and produce meaning. Other factors are necessary. So just because they're in the sport doesn't mean that they have that has any meaning to them. It doesn't mean that they're going to inherently have that purpose. So the impetus is on us to help them. And one of the things that we need to start thinking deeply about from the very get-go is what we think about competition, because this is going to answer that question of why athletes play sport, right? Essentially, they're playing because they want competition, but how we think about competition, this is going to really change outcomes. Okay, we're gonna use some two stark examples. Maybe you don't ever think that you have a war approach to competition, but think about the times that you said that you want to kill the opponent, you want to slay them, attack them, right? Those metaphors are actually really powerful. They're really powerful. But when you think about competition as a partnership, that actually improves outcomes. What does that look like? What does a partnership look like? And why does that matter? So each conceptual metaphor does have implications. It's related to goal orientation. It affects positive and negative emotion. These things that we say really do matter. They really do change the way that youth interact with sport and how they feel. So when competition is cognitively processed automatically and implicitly through the partnership metaphor, that's what we're talking about, partnership, it appears to support an ongoing long-term quest for excellence. So when you're using that type of language, and you're supporting each other, and you see your opponents as someone that you're mutually striving for excellence with, you're going to have the best predictors for youth outcomes. Okay, so we often think about competition in a negative way. We think but in sport, we welcome it. We see that as, like we said, a mutual striving for excellence, and that conflict and tension that our youth are going through is actually a really important opportunity for them in life, right? We know that this competition and this striving, this tension, actually helps them to learn a lot of important skills that we talked about. Some of those things we want to see them develop. So what does it mean to compete? Again, I want to go back to this idea that the actual, the derivative, the Latin derivative, competito, means to question or strive together. So we really want to think of our opponent as someone that's valuable to me, somebody that makes me better, versus an enemy. So the enemy is like that war metaphor, but somebody who's a partner or somebody who is going to make me better. That's a different way of thinking about that. So how are we communicating that to our athletes, to our organizations? Are we careful with the words that we choose, and are we thinking about competition in this way? Okay, so also we have to address this issue of wanting to win at all costs, because this is really, again, when we're talking about purpose and why we're doing sports, if the only reason why they're doing sports, athletes are doing sports, or the coaches or parents, is to win, then that's not going to actually lead to the best outcomes. It's a strong motivator, but we really want them to just become the best versions of themselves. That's what we mean when we say excellent. We want them to really rise up to their best. And so this is an approach that we suggest for coaches, for organizations. We call it double goal coaching. And this is the idea that character and excellence, or winning, performance, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to pick one or the other. Okay? So you can build character and you can win. It's okay to strive for excellence. We're not saying, oh, winning doesn't matter. We're not saying that. We're saying that's it, because if you take that aspect of it, nobody's improving. We want to see growth. We want to see development. We want to see the athletes become the best that they can be. So we want you to think about this from a double goal perspective. And again, just to emphasize, the way that this is going to happen is through the adults. The adults are managing the experience that the youth are having. We have a responsibility to take these things seriously and really think deeply about competition and the purpose of competition. And when it comes to the athlete experience, really it's a system. You guys know this. You understand that the experience that they have really does depend upon parents, siblings, peers, coaches, organizations, communities, All of these things are influencing, and every single one of them matters. Every single one of them needs to be aligned with the same purpose that is going to be pushing our youth towards positive development. So it's really important that as organizations we design and deliver, and that we are in alignment with these higher ideals and goals for our youth. So how important is organizational purpose and identity? Well, of course, based off of that last chart, I would say quite important. It's very important because that's going to affect the experience for the youth. So in this specific research study, they found that as high school athletes, though, were not aware of the school's mission statement. So maybe you have a beautiful mission statement or purpose statement already, but in this study, they're finding, like in this particular instance, that the athletes weren't even aware of the mission statement, okay? They didn't have a moral concept. They felt their coaches did not have clear values, and yet they believed that the sport setting was important for their character development. So they know, our youth know that sport is an important context, but they're not getting the message. Either it's because there isn't a clear message, or because it's not being communicated effectively. So balancing the competing demands that you have is really what is going to distinguish the excellent organizations from the mediocre ones. And coming into clear focus with your purpose for your athletes and for your sporting programs is really going to make a difference, not just for the individual athlete, but for your organizations. And that's something that we all want to see. So purpose and meaning also helps to express why your work is important, and it can also help you to define proper courses of action. So there's quite a bit that you can also benefit from to clearly defining your purpose and identity as an organization. But of course, the most important being the way that it ultimately affects the athletes. So here's some possible action steps for you. And then after I go through this with you, I'm going to share just a small, tiny story from my life. Then we're going to go through a worksheet together, okay, to help you guys to articulate your purpose. So help young athletes determine their why, right? So not only the organization, but each athlete, why are they doing that? Clearly define those values, and we're going to help you do that in a worksheet here in a minute. And create opportunities for and experiences for athletes to have autonomy, competence, and connectedness. That's what's going to improve their intrinsic motivation, and then hold stakeholders accountable for their behaviors. So just a brief example from my life. I admittedly, as somebody who researches character in sport, I don't have a ton of sporting experience. This is kind of a joke that Matt and I have. But I did, however, play high school soccer at a time that I was a very vulnerable youth. And my coach saw that I was struggling and saw that I needed to have some meaning and purpose in my life. And the time that I spent on that team was really transformative for me, and it, quite frankly, kept me out of trouble. And so I just want to express to you guys the power that youth sport can have. You know that, you have your own personal experiences, but I also speak from experience that sport really does have the power to transform young people's lives. I really believe that, or I wouldn't be here with you today. I really do believe that we can help young people develop to the best versions of themselves if we get it right on an organizational level, and also thinking about keeping the athlete at the center of all that we do, that their purpose and their development really does matter.